Good morning. Welcome to Unity Longmont Spiritual Center on the 24th of September, 2023. Beautiful fall day here in Longmont, Colorado. I'm Dava Money, and we are blessed with Faith Halverson-Ramos to provide us with music. So we'll start with Faith.
Good morning. Our first song today is There Is Only One of Us by Melissa Phillip. There is only one of us. In your eyes it's me I see. There is only one of us. You are my reflection. There is only one. There is only one of us. In your eyes it's me I see. There is only one of us. You are my reflection. There is only one. You are my reflection. There is only one.
Thank you, Faith, for the reminder of our relationship with each other and all that is. Thank you. It's at this time that we go into prayer by taking a breath together. Beloved presence, we join today to rest in the Sabbath. We join to be inspired, to be inspirited with presence. We are aware that our faith goes all the way back to the early Israelites, and aware that tomorrow is Yom Kippur. Although we may not actively practice it, it may be helpful to remember it's a day of atonement, a day of forgiveness. And as humans who make mistakes, as we all do, we may find it hard to forgive ourselves for some things. And yet that is what we are called to do, to forgive ourselves. So in this moment, anything that is asking to be forgiven, may it come to our awareness. And as it comes to our awareness, may we simply bless it and let it go, knowing we are whole. We are children of God, and at heart pure. And so it is.
Our next song is Allowing by Susie Hulcher. It's all about allowing peace within. In absolute surrender, so serenity begins. For when the storm subsided and calm becomes the way, it's all about allowing it to stay. It's all about allowing love to flow. It's setting down your burden and just simply letting go. For as you cease the struggle and love pours through your heart, It's all about allowing it to start. For as you cease the struggle and love pours through your heart, it's all about allowing it to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Faith. Let's start. So I looked for some inspiration, and inspiration for talk can come from most anywhere. So the inspiration for today's talk comes from the book I read a number of years ago called Love Without End. And it's by Glenda Green. I don't know, I see some head shaking, so some of you have read this. And I'll tell you the story of how this painting came to be and invite you to notice whether you have seen it before. So you might ask yourself, does this look familiar? The title of the painting is The Lamb and the Lion. The lion is in the clouds. So how this painting came about was that Glenda Green had a visitation. There was this huge bright light, the kind of bright light that doesn't burn your retina, but invites you in. And she saw Jesus. Now, I don't know whether this is something you can believe. What I invite you to consider is whether or not you can believe what was said. So he told her that he would give her some information about life, about God, about who we are, and asked her to paint what he showed of himself and this image. Now, of course, in this day and age, this was in the 1990s. At this time, we go, well, why is Jesus white with blue eyes? Because we know where Jesus, the historical figure, came from. I don't know that I have an answer to that, except that we all have our own biases. And so perhaps that was the way that she had grown up to see Jesus. Regardless, this is a story of miracles. So she's given this image. She is an artist. She is a trained artist. He asks her to paint that, and she takes 40 days to prepare to paint. She has a very complex way of painting, and some of it includes her understanding of physics. What's significant about 40 is metaphysically, it is the number that typically means the time to prepare. So often in the Bible, you will see 40 days and 40 nights, 40 years, 40 years old. Again, it is representing whatever time it takes for that person to be ready. So when she's ready, he comes and he sits with her as she's painting. She asks questions, he gives her information. And again, I ask you to notice whether what he shared resonates with you. And I'm going to share a number of concepts, some of them just in brief sentences. And I ask you to notice how you respond to them. What do you feel in your body? What are you aware of in your mind? And most importantly, what's going on in your heart? So I said this is a story of miracles. One of the miracles is that after she did this painting, she began to share it at different churches around the country. And one of the churches was in Texas. And As they were putting the painting up, a lamp fell and tore the painting. She was so aghast. Here was this thing she'd worked so hard on, and it was irreparably damaged. But it was going to be at a distance, so she hoped, as did the minister and the other people helping, that nobody would notice. After that event was over, she packaged up the painting, she took it home, and when she took it out, there was no evidence of damage. So she called her friend Judy at the church and said, "Am I imagining it, or wasn't this painting damaged? Didn't it have a hole in it right in the left lower corner?" Judy said, "Oh, yes, we all saw that. We checked it out." Judy went to the minister and said, "This is what happened." And he said, "I'm not surprised. I prayed for it all night long." So I invite you to be thoughtful about what do miracles mean to you, and to be open-minded to consider, have you experienced any miracles? Have you experienced any miracles? And what do those feel like? So let's look at what he said. One of the first things he said was that the exploration of human consciousness is the last frontier. And we know that when Jesus came and lived here on earth and taught and healed and did all that he did, he demonstrated an elevated consciousness, which we have been invited to grow into. We know from spiral dynamics, sociology, a lot of anthropology, a lot of other things and sciences, that human consciousness has continued to grow, and I trust it will continue to grow. So he also said the mundane and the miraculous are the same. Think about that for a moment. In our meditation, Bobby talked about the leaf letting go. That could be seen as mundane and fall. All these leaves are falling. Mounds of them are accruing on the ground. And yet she pointed out it's miraculous. So if one focuses on the impact of love and its capacity to bring miracles into being, then miracles become a part of life. So if you consider the times you may have experienced a miracle, weren't you in a place of love? Or the miracle brought you into a place of love? The first thing that Jesus said to her was, "Glenda, you are love." He didn't say you are loving. He said you are love. He said you do not have to know in order to love, for love is the power. So when we get confused, as we do as human beings, when we have tough decisions to make, when we have tough things to do, come back to remembering we are love. And love is power. It is the power of the universe. He spoke a lot of the difference of the mind and the heart. He said the mind would look for troubles of the heart as fertile ground for dominating it. He speaks about the struggle between the mind and the heart. And haven't we all experienced that? He talks about the mind ultimately has no power, but is seeking it. The heart has the power. The sacred heart is pure and has all the power. So it's helpful to notice if we are having a difficulty between our mind and our heart, how do we take a breath, let go, and follow our heart. Sometimes following the heart looks kind of crazy, but it always gets us through. So we talk in Unity a lot about duality. And this is a different kind of duality, isn't it? The mind and the heart. It is the heart that is the I am. It is the heart, the sacred heart, that is the love. When the heart despairs, because as humans it may, that's when the mind tries to take over. The mind can be a very good servant when it knows what its job is, when it is supported to do that job. The mind integrates information and experience from our lives. It has a job. It's logical and we can use that logic, but it's important not to put that logic before the heart. The heart, the greatest power of the heart is compassion. Allow yourself, if you're willing in this moment, to be aware of what compassion is, to be aware of how our bodies soften in compassion, how our heart understands in compassion. It's very powerful. So it's important that we don't let the mind get in the way of that. One of the ways the mind gets in the way of that is judgment. Haven't we all been there? We see someone suffering or we are suffering ourselves. The heart wants to respond with compassion. And what does our monkey mind do? Jump in and judge. Well, if they had done this, and this, they wouldn't be in that position now, right? If I had done this or not done this, that's irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. There is suffering in life. We know it. Most everyone who has lived has known it. And it calls for compassion. Remember the very first thing that Jesus told Glenda: you are love. So he's emphatic that love is not a doing, it is a being. We are often thinking that I love this, I love that. What does that mean? It means we're doing something, we're sending something. What his teaching is about is being something, being the love that God is. And by being that love, our presence has an effect. He talks about scarcity, which is the conception of mind, not the heart. The heart knows that the universe is unending, that anything and everything is in the universe. However, our mind ends up focusing on specifics, and it ends up focusing on what he calls structure. Structure being things like the exchange of money. Structure being things like a recognition or a belief that there's a hierarchy in people's worth because of money and status, etc. And he says if the heart gets confused and is told by the mind often enough that there's not enough, that there is scarcity, then the mind will also work really, really hard to attract money. And so it's all this intensity going in a different direction than we are invited to go in. Back to that direction, to that recognition, to that experience, to that understanding and identification of being love. Again, I invite you in this moment to be love. You already are love. Can we allow our mind to rest for a moment and become aware of the love we are? To become aware of the love that every single being is, to become aware of the love that everything is, because that is the power. That is what God is. God is everything. There is unity. There is no opposite of love. It's all love. And then we have these monkey minds that make up other stories that help create difficulties and suffering. So he talked about the mind, he talked about the heart, he talked about the sacred heart, and she asked about the soul. The soul is the totality of your love, awareness, experience, ability, memory, emotions, and potential, which comprise your immortality. So some of that sounds a bit like personality, and then he gets to the immortality piece. So again, the soul is the totality of your love, awareness, and take a moment right now to be aware and know what awareness is. Experience, even in this moment we're experiencing. Ability, we probably all have more ability than we give ourselves credit for. Memory, emotions, and potential. All of that being immortal. All of that being personal. All of that being our self. He talked about one of the sufferings here on earth is what he called the birth trauma. And that is that beingness of love chose to create beings of love to have their own experience, their own memories, their own gifts, etc. And still being part of all, because nothing can be separate from all. And that some of us, historically and today, have experienced that as separation. And it isn't separation. Some have experienced that as rejection. Think back to the story of the Garden of Eden. In unity, we have our own particular interpretation of it. The traditional interpretation is that Eve and Adam were created as humans, and Eve got curious and was convinced by a snake to eat of the apple of knowledge. And in the background, there are voices that say, oh my gosh, they ate the apple. Now they are like gods. Now they are gods, knowing good and evil. And then they're thrown out of the garden. rather than making a choice. Haven't we all made a choice at some level to be here? A choice at some level to understand who we are? And we can make a choice, perhaps needing to do it over and over and over again, to remember who we are, that we are love, that we are love. So another thing he talks about is sometimes love has to let go. Just as Bobby talked about the leaves falling from the tree, sometimes we have to let go of someone, of something, of some emotions, of some perceptions. And he said sometimes that's hard. That when we see someone suffering and we may perceive they need help, be careful not to jump in and provide. That may be taking some opportunity away from them. Think about that for a moment. Have there ever been any times in your life where you didn't even know what you needed and somebody jumped in and maybe it felt good or maybe it didn't? What we are called to do in that instance is to be love. And again, that presence of love is felt by that other person. This is a big job, I think, to continuously come back to remember we are love and that love is not doing, it is being. So we're all created in love, and whatever much of that we express and are known by is a measurement of our wellness. And that the more we come to who we are, the more well we are, the more whole we are. One of our goals in living this life is wholeness. What does wholeness mean when we've got a mind, a heart, a sacred heart, and a soul? To me, wellness has always meant an alignment between those things, mind, body, and spirit. I invite you in this moment to ask yourself, what does wellness mean to you? What does wholeness mean to you? And maybe if you're willing, ask yourself, where are you on your journey toward that? Where are you? And can we look at that answer ourselves with compassion, with kindness, rather than any kind of judgment? So, what it means to be created in the image of God is that holy will pours through all mankind, generation after generation, by way of a common essence. That essence is love. And he gives this example that if I were to take some DNA from your head and DNA from your arm and your foot and your gut and your lungs, all separate parts, we look at the DNA and it's you, right? So every one of us, everything that exists beyond our knowledge of what exists, is all love. That is what there is. That is what is. How can we be different from that? We ultimately cannot be different from love. But we have these human minds that may try to convince us that we are, because it needs a job to do, you know? And so perhaps if we're not intentional about giving our mind the job of collecting information, of assessing at this human level, it's going to figure out its own job and go awry. Being love means accepting the conditions of life. Accepting the conditions of life. There will always be conditions in life. How many times I have fought the conditions of life? I don't think there's a number big enough to describe it. It's probably something I do every single day. Oh, it's cold. I'm going to put on the heat and make it not cold. Well, that's okay. But at heart is that I'm going to make it different. We recently read The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's an example of a man who found a way to accept the conditions of life, even when they were very, very hard. So we know the times that we have not accepted the condition, that we have fought against it, that our mind has gone to battle with life. Maybe it's helpful to take a moment to be aware of the times we have accepted the conditions of life. As some of you know, my dog, Precious, was diagnosed with Cushing's disease in August. And those of you that know me well have known I have not accepted that condition of life on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. A few days after the diagnosis, I had this experience, though. In the evening, I was sitting, I was resting, I was looking at her. And something in me just expanded. And I would call that love. And the way that my mind interpreted that was, all I need to do is love her. That's all I need to do. So in our humanness, what sense do we make of that? We have a tendency to, again, change love into something I do. Okay, I'm going to be kind to her. I'm going to feed her. I'm going to give her exercise. I'm going to get her treatment. I'm going to do, and do. Those are all important things. What's critical, though, I think, was those few moments where something in me experienced something differently. There was no problem. There was nothing wrong. We were just love. So he talks about the soul is longing for the experience of being human. The soul is longing for experience that it can only have by having a body. The soul, this body, everything is love. There's another interesting thing he said when there's no difference between loving what's before you and loving something else which might be preferred. What does that mean? The blessing lies not in the object of loving, but the opportunity for loving. And again, loving is being, right? And so she asked him, what should I love first? And he said, whatever is in front of you. You know, if I look over that way, what's in front of me is some dust and dirt that needs vacuuming. Whatever is in front of you, love. There are other messages that he gave, but again, I think we've emphasized the most important one. We are love. In unity, we talk about being human and being divine, and we wrestle with that sometimes. But doesn't our soul understand that? Doesn't our soul, who wants a body to have experiences, understand being human and being divine? And what do we call that divinity? We call that I am. I am. And where do we get that I am? When Moses asked God who God was, God responded, I am who am. Yahweh, I am. So I leave us at this time with I am and invite you to say that. I am. And notice the resonance. Say it out loud. I am. And notice in our English language how M tingles the lips. Well, we've got this human body, and we know when that happens, the vagus nerve is being stimulated to tell us we are peaceful and calm. So please remember, I am. And so it is. And we will hear from Faith.
Well, I was going to do something, and now I'm thinking of doing something else based on the talk. So this song is I Am Remembering Who I Am by Melissa Phillip. I am remembering who I am. 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 I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you. It's at this time that we go into our donation of love and light by remembering who we are. that we are love, we are light. And by remembering that and being fully aware of it, we can allow it to expand beyond us. We can allow to recognize how everything is love and light. And we personally get the experience of touching love and light. We do that by being who we are, by being love. We do that anytime by remembering who we are. Being aware in this moment of the love and the light. And for this and all things, we express our gratitude by saying thank you. And so it is. And we will hear again from Faith.
Our last song today is Work of Heart by David Alt. You are a work of heart, a brilliant light for all to see, perfect in every part, heaven and earth in harmony. The beauty of your face reveals a life of grace. You are a work of heart, a masterpiece. I am a work of heart, a brilliant light for all to see, perfect in every part, heaven and earth in harmony. The beauty of my face reveals a life of grace. I am a work of heart, a masterpiece. We are a work of heart, a brilliant light for all to see, perfect in every part, heaven and earth in harmony. The beauty of our face reveals a life of grace. We are a work of heart, a masterpiece. We are a work of heart, a masterpiece.